I have complex partial, tonic-clonic, and absence seizures. I've weaned off my medication before, and it did trigger a seizure for me. My most recent seizure, which was in November, happened because I forgot to take my medication, which informed me, this is a drug that I rely on, but no one had ever told me before it's never going away until a few weeks ago, which was interesting because it removed my sense of autonomy in how I treat my epilepsy, and nothing about my lifestyle will change. I'll continue to take the same medication, but now it's no longer a choice, and it's something I have to do and part of who I am, and will continue to be that way for the rest of my life. It is a challenge, for sure, but it also just becomes part of who you are and informs how you live your life. It goes beyond just, the physical elements of epilepsy, but also it's a new way you have to look at the world and change the way that you interact with it. I don't remember a lot of my childhood. I think so much of my time was spent having seizures that it has really disconnected me from that, where when I think of who my 7-year-old self was, the first thing that comes to mind is how many seizures was I having then? Certain, moments or trips will get referenced, and I just am I don't remember that. And that's really, really upsetting and bizarre. I was 7 years old when I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So I've ran through a lot of different medications. To be honest, I can't list them off the top of my head because I was 7, so I don't fully remember. But I also was put on the ketogenic diet. I had to spend really extended stays in the hospital just to transition my body into running off of ketones. And I had a wonderful team of doctors who curated my meals for me specifically. The ketogenic diet was very difficult for me, especially being a child. It made me very different from my peers in a very obvious way. Just a lot of my life changed when I was on it. A lot of things that kids get to do, I never got to do, or I didn't get to do while I was on it. I remember I was in the cafeteria and I had my little box of meticulously prepared food and weighed out sliced turkey, and a girl bumped into me and she knocked my turkey onto the ground, and I had already started eating it, and I just started bawling and freaking out because I was if I don't eat the rest of my meal to the correct proportions, I'm gonna have a seizure. So I had to pick up the turkey off the ground that I couldn't eat anymore and call the nurse and my mom, and she had to come to school, and we had to weigh the turkey and replace it. And it was this, I still remember that day. It was so stressful for me. Most 10-year-olds don't have to stress that way when their lunch gets knocked on the ground. Usually you just eat something else. But for me, that wasn't the reality I was living in. The fact that my medication works for me. Without that, I would not be able to have the independence to pursue my career. But also, there's a level of care that I have to take towards myself and my body that sometimes, and most of the time, isn't shared with other college students. That without that kind of attention to detail that I have to live my life with, I don't know if I would be able to do what I love. I have to sleep. If I can't fall asleep the night before, I'm not making my 9 a.m. class. And yes, that will put me behind, but I can't show up to class on 2 hours of sleep. It's not an option. If I have a homework assignment due the next day, I can't pull an all-nighter to get it done. I can't be in settings with strobe lights. I have to just plan out my days to make sure that I'm meeting, all of my needs and staying in safe environments. What helps me a lot is never being alone. I try to never be alone. And I have great friends who support me. But I am incredibly grateful that I get to continue pursuing what I love to do and living this life that does involve risk. I mean, what happened last November when I had a seizure at school, that was, a wake-up call for me to reinforce these rules. Epilepsy is invisible until it's very visible. And so I think the fact that at this point in my life, I'm not having seizures multiple times a week or every day, and I can go long periods of time presenting, I guess you would say, completely normal. And so I would say it's kind of the trope of invisible illness. You can't see it until you see it, and people need to not use that as a reason to not take it seriously. Just because it doesn't happen every day doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I can live a really, really productive life and get a lot done. It just means that I'm not having a seizure right now, and you still need to be prepared for me to have one, maybe tomorrow, because you can't predict it. I was seizure-free for over a year. My medication really does a great job of controlling my epilepsy. I'm very lucky. What we're striving for is to be able to have our epilepsy under control and not have to deal with those extreme side effects. Severe weight loss that was dangerous for me growing up, and one of the medications made my attention span and ability to retain information so small that I was really just barely present because I was kind of just floating through my life, and it was not sustainable. So I've had many different side effects, and the goal is not to have that. And thankfully right now, the medication I'm on controls my epilepsy and I have no side effects. So I'm very grateful for that, and that's what I hope for everyone. Educating yourself on seizure first aid is such a favor you would be doing to the community. I put a lot of work into educating others, and I love to do that. And my hope is that that information is retained and applied, because it isn't the most complicated thing in the world. It's just a matter of you placing enough importance on remembering that, and you making the choice that this is something worth remembering, and I'm going to be the person to exercise compassion today, to get over what this person looks like and hold them, hands-on, save their life. For me, I think remembering those steps is so easy. It's this opportunity to better yourself quickly, to be able to help others, and it's something to remember. It's information that's worth retaining. I want anyone who has epilepsy to know they are not alone. There are places you can find support, and there are people who will help you, who want to help you. And for me, that realization is what made this whole journey for me possible. I started visiting support groups through the Epilepsy Foundation of San Diego, which I cannot speak highly enough of. That changed my life, my family's life at the time. I found doctors who really cared about me. And even now, at this point in my life, I find my friends who don't leave my side when I'm having a seizure. And those are the people who make it okay. In November, I had a seizure at school in front of my peers and my professor. And this was the first time that had happened to me in college. I had briefed all of the faculty multiple times on seizure first aid. My whole upbringing, that's something I've done no matter where I go, elementary school, high school, summer programs for ballet. It was different this time because I had that seizure in that ballet studio, and 3 people stood up to get by my side and help me. out of probably 35. The priority was to clear the room for my privacy, not to help me. And so I ended up being alone, and I almost lost my life. There were plenty of people who stopped and stared to watch. A student saw what happened and looked at me and went, and walked out like, this is gross, almost. And I remember told all my peers when I had a meeting with them, I said, a seizure, it is scary to look at, but it also could take my life. I encourage anyone who maybe encounters a seizure to remember that. It is scary to look at, but it's actually a lot scarier for the person who's having the seizure. And sometimes things aren't pretty, and you just kind of have to get over it to help the people around you. If I could talk to my 7-year-old self who was first being diagnosed with epilepsy, I would first give them a hug. And it sounds like simple, but just say, it is going to be okay. It will be okay. I can't think of anything more, complex to say than just, it will be okay. I went through, I believe, 7 medications. And, when you're on 6 or 7, you really start to think, how many left? How many options do we have left here? And so that's why I think it's just very important to continue this research and make advancements. What I hope for everyone is to be seizure-free and also not have any side effects.